Welcome in, Deep Threat Sports Network race fans. Josh and I are back with another episode of Splash and Go. Marty should be joining us, and if not, hey, we're just going to continue on. Marty's got some things going on. He's going to try to get to us as soon as he can. But hey, right now, you're with Josh and I, and we're really excited. This Kansas Speedway race was a super exciting race all day long. These drivers were racing hard. But hey, on this episode, we're going to do a Kansas breakdown. We're going to update the playoffs for you guys, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to the Talladega Super Speedway. We are super pumped for that one. But first, in this Kansas race today, we had Stage 1 winner William Byron, Stage 2 winner Alex Bowman, and the race winner Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain he had a fast car. I didn't really think he was going to seal the deal on this one, but the Watermelon man, he got it done here and made it super exciting. Josh, what did you see at this Kansas Raceway today?
Today, I saw a lot of opportunistic pit times. It was those cautions came out at the right time where those guys were able to go in and get a splash and go, if you may. It was a pretty interesting race. You know, the Hendrick cars really struggled there at the beginning. We had Larson who went up into the wall, and the race was never the same after that for him. He just couldn't keep the speed. He had opportune times to get into the pits, work on the car. It just didn't work out for me. At one point, he was a lap down. He caught another caution, and he was able to get back on the lead lap, which watching it. I was kind of rooting for him, but you could kind of see the car wasn't the same going forward. After that, Bell got into the wall about 70 laps in. I mean, that's where Byron overtook him. Bell was driving really, really hard. I think the Toyotas were struggling a little bit today. You really saw that on the 2311 cars. They kind of lost their groove here at Kansas. It was a tough go for the 2311 cars. Tyler Reddick just wasn't there. Bubba Wallace wasn't even talked about all day. And you even saw Denny Hamlin struggling with that Toyota as well. It was really a Hendrick day and a Penske day. It kind of looked like for the first two stages.
Yeah, man, Larson cutting that tire down due to some debris early on in the race. So just, you're right. It never really was the same. He had a really fast car coming out of the gates. So that really did kind of alter the whole entire race, in my opinion. But yeah, I was on William Byron. You guys heard it here last week. I picked William Byron, and he did kind of seal the deal for me this week against Josh and Marty. We're going to go ahead and chalk another one up for the Ronald McDonald house. So that's awesome. I'm fired up about that. Yeah, man, William Byron is super fast. I really did think he was going to run Chastain down at the end of that race. He sure made a hell of a run at it. You even saw Truex kind of making a run to get up in there at the end. He really cut down the lead. I think if you had, you probably would have needed 5 or 6 more laps for him to find himself in the mix. But man, he looked fast at the end. I just, I'm really shocked that Christopher Bell couldn't hold this thing steady. In my opinion, Josh, I think he probably had the fastest car of the day. He just could not keep it out of the corners, man. It was shocking to me. But this is something we've kind of seen Christopher Bell do off and on throughout his career. So this really isn't a total surprise. But man, I really thought with the playoff race on the line and to get a win, he would probably change his tactics a little bit and settle in, and he never really did. But something else that we saw happen in this race, it seemed like Chase Briscoe really pissed off a couple of non-playoff drivers. How do you feel about that, Josh? Because in my opinion, I know a race is a race, but the way I look at this, man, you're a playoff driver, and I don't blame him for making the moves that he was making to secure the position. I think I'm going to be on Chase Briscoe's side with this, shockingly. I mean, if this was a regular season race and or Briscoe wasn't in the playoffs, then hey, I get it. All bets are off. But man, he's trying to make a run of the championship, Josh. I think I'm going to side with him on this.
Yeah, I really can't agree with you more, especially the Christopher Bell comment about how Christopher Bell was out in the front. At one point, I almost texted you and Marty and said, it's clear Christopher Bell has the fastest car out there today. He touched the wall a couple times here and there, and it was unfortunate because he was on a run. And I could say what I want to say about the Toyota cars lacking. Him and Truex had the fastest Toyotas on the track today, if you ask me. Chase Briscoe, on the other hand, puts Bush up into the wall late in stage three. You know, Bush is in first place, and I've been saying it all postseason. You know, Bush is going to get a win. Bush is going to get a win, and I was rooting for him when he was coming up on Briscoe. I knew it was going to be a problem. I didn't know how it was going to play out. I kind of felt it coming, and it did look like Briscoe was going to give him the lane there. He gave him inches, is what he gave him. And that air came off the car and Bush went in the wall. There was no contact between Busch and Briscoe. And even after all that played out and the caution came out, Busch was still in the top 10. So it took the lead away from him. I think going on in the race, I think even if he would have got around Briscoe clean, I think he was getting into the back end of these lap drivers and he was going to run into a problem. And I think him and Chastain were probably going to battle it out for the rest of the race with no cautions. And they were battling it out for probably like 10 laps here and there. And it was some good driving between those two. It's just a shame to see Bush go out like that again.
My thoughts on what you just said, and this is all hypothetical because this didn't happen. So this is hypothetically speaking here. If you could you imagine if we would have saw Chastain and Bush coming down at the end and they were neck and neck? Let's be honest. I don't think either one of those guys would have saw the podium because they would have been at the back of the pack taking each other out. That's just what these guys. I guess it's what they do. But when you're racing hard like that, and Bush seemed to be kind of pissed off with the way this season's gone for him, it probably would have ended under caution for those two drivers. But Josh, one thing I noticed throughout this whole entire race is the restarts just kicked their asses. Everybody's. We saw caution after caution within a few laps after a restart. Is it because these guys were this because they pressing, where they were just bumping and grinding so hard, trying to fight for position to get out in front to really earn some points? I mean, what do you think caused this here? Because it was time after time and time. I mean, we had, not to mention, we had a caution on lap one. So I mean,
Oh
this
yeah.
was just nuts here. This was crazy to me. What were you seeing with that?
I was seeing they were 3 and 4 wide coming out of turn two, and every time they got 3, 4 wide coming out of turn two, they were dancing all over the place. A majority of our cautions came out of turn two. And I don't know if there was something going on. Maybe that first wreck is when Larson came back around, he picked up the debris, and then he had a slow leak on his tire. Everything seemed to be coming out of turn two, except for you were watching drivers touch the wall coming out of four. But you were seeing a majority of the action on turn two. And I think they were just running too wide, not enough room, and the air was coming off the car. Everybody likes to complain about this car and the aerodynamics and how it doesn't pass, this, that, and the other. And I think you were kind of seeing a lot of that come into effect when they were coming out of turn two today. Well, there he is, the prodigal son.
Hey, we got Marty in the building. We told y'all he'd be here. We told
What's
y'all
up,
he'd make an
fellas?
appearance. Marty, you're
What's up,
just in
fellas?
time. You're
Perfect.
just in time. We were just
Perfect.
talking about, hey, what we saw kind of with this Kansas race, why the restarts were so tough, kind of how, Larson went down early with the tire wear, it caused a caution for him, and he never looked the same the rest of the way. We talked about how Christopher Bell had the fastest car, keeps getting into corners, can't keep his car clean. And I was just fixing to talk about how William Byron, if he could have got some clean air, I think he would have ran Chastain down within another lap for sure. So, Marty, hey, let's get right to it with you. Let's pick up right where we were at. What'd you see in this race?
Yeah, I mean Christopher Bell, he's qualifying great. He's running sections of races great, and just hasn't been able to finish. I think we've seen that a time or two from him this season. I agree that William Byron probably had more speed per se than Chastain, but with this car, with the lead car, it is so hard at the end of the race to run these drivers down and make passes. You know, if you take the high line away and you take some of their air away, it makes it very hard on them. They have to be significantly faster to run these drivers down and to pass them. But I agree. You know, Kyle Larson, I'm surprised he made it back where he did, considering the damage. And if you listen to some of his radio, how he talked about, Cliff was like, I just don't understand why we're getting out of the way. And he said, hey, man, I'm slow. I have so much drag from all this damage. I'm trying my best here. So for them to finish where they did, I think they kind of saved their day a little bit. Some bad luck that they had there, but a lot of playoff drivers had bad luck. And I think Kansas was my kind of hash mark on this round here to kind of be a safer race for some of these playoff drivers. And it was anything but that. You saw that people were continually being put in bad spots, being forced to drive as hard as they could to make spots. I think we're seeing non-playoff drivers here kind of make their mark. They're not laying back like they had in years past. Years past, I would have expected at Kansas for our top 15 to be all playoff drivers. I didn't expect to have people spread out so far, but I thought it was a good race. I thought we saw a lot of action, and the playoff drivers need to go into Talladega, which is a tough place to turn around your fortune. You need to go in there and race clean now because Kansas was pretty wild.
Colin, you kind of talked about the restarts before Marty jumped in here and how the restarts were really, really screwing guys over. And a guy who got really screwed over today with these restarts is Joey Logano. I mean, he was up front. Talk about a guy who knows how to conserve his tires and his fuel and push at the end when it counts. I watched it happen in stage one. I watched it happen in stage two. The very end, the last 10 laps, you start seeing him creep up, and you're like, oh, he's got this track figured out. And had it not been for those late stage three cautions, he probably would have been hanging out there in the top five, making a run for the front as well. But he got pushed back on a restart, and I think he was in sixth place on the restart coming out of the pits from a caution, and he ended up finishing in like 16th, I think.
One guy that we haven't talked about yet that we probably should have almost led off with is Chase Elliott. Starts at the back of the pack, finishes in the top 10. What a performance by him. He didn't seem too happy in his post-race interview. But I tell you what, man, you start in the back of the pack and you scratch a top 10 finish with a race as crazy as this. And Chase, let's not forget, man, lap one, you almost got taken out on the caution on lap one. So you escaped fate right there out of the gate, man. And I think you should be happy with this. I really do. I mean, obviously you want to go out there and win, but you work your way from all the way to the back and get in the top 10. I'm tipping the cap, man. What a race by Chase.
Yeah, he did some really good driving today. It was pretty impressive. He's plus four. He's in the top eight of the playoffs right now, and he's looking pretty good. I had my doubts about him, but today he really proved me wrong. I don't know exactly what went wrong with that engine in qualifying and in practice, but it went sour on him. I'm really hoping that he can pass inspections.
Yeah, I would hope he would pass inspection as well. I think that you have to in these playoffs is you have to take what you're given sometimes. Like we saw in the first round, the round of 16, Denny Hamlin qualified terrible at Atlanta and run back there pretty much all day. You know that in going forward, every position is going to matter in these playoffs. So for him to finish in the top 10 was important. And also how you guys were talking about the restarts, I feel like that you have to restarts are the easiest, or I should say the easiest, but the restarts everybody's the closest together. They're going to be that entire run. So you try to pass as many cars as you can on these restarts. These restarts are a premium now, especially since they're double file restarts with lead lap cars. You have to pick up as many cars as you can. So I think you're going to continue to see the restarts being key in the playoffs. And you saw a lot of people get shuffled back on restarts here at this racetrack, and it shows you how having a bad restart can really hurt you. But I agree that Chase Elliott ran well. Joey Logano, he keeps making a liar out of me. He keeps proving to me that he is a competitor, but I keep expecting him to go south somewhere, and he just hasn't done it yet. So,
Man, talk about somebody making a guy look good. Joey Logano sure does make Josh look good, don't he? I love it.
And he
Josh
gave
has been all over.
he gave Suarez the finger today. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
that was that was one of the highlights of the race, seeing that. Especially you just see that little picture, man. I don't know something about it. It just gave me like Bart Simpson vibes, man. You just see a little finger sticking out of a window, and it was cracking me up every time. When you sent that picture to me, Josh, it made my day. But hey, we're on to Talladega, boys. We're on to the Yellowwood 500 at the Talladega Super Speedway. That's going to be at 1 o'clock p.m. Sunday, October 6th on NBC. And this is my favorite race of the year. I absolutely love Talladega. I've been to Talladega. It's a great time, great race. You're always going to see a big one. You're always going to see some big name guys get caught up in some they shouldn't be caught up in. It's going to make this extremely exciting. So, with that being said, Josh, kind of tell me what you're going to be on the lookout here for in this Talladega race. Do you kind of have a guy in mind? Because I had a guy that for some reason just immediately came to me. I'm going to save that for later, but he just immediately came in my head, and I was like, this is the guy here. So, Josh, did you have that same feeling?
Not really. I really don't know what to think going into Talladega after watching today's race and watching some of these non-playoff drivers absolutely dominate throughout the day. Bell did what he did throughout the beginning of the race, and he looked phenomenal. He had some issues, but watching these non-playoff drivers really poke their heads out and do some driving kind of throws me through a loop going into Talladega. I really don't know what to expect. I think we'll get a big one, like you said. I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping to see Cindric get get up there and have a better race than he did today. Cindric got caught with a bunch of bad luck today. I'd like to see him finish better this week. Tyler Reddick as well. I mean, I don't know what was going on, but there was a point in time in the race where he just started falling off. And you could hear him talking to his crew chiefs, and he was talking about not being able to accelerate coming out of the turns. And he was getting loose on the exit of the turns, and I really think they have some troubleshooting to do with that car before they get into Talladega this weekend. I'm rooting for Reddick. I'm rooting for Cindric. I really want to see those two pull it off this weekend and get themselves out of the elimination spots.
Cindric absolutely can make a push at this, I think. I feel like Cindric can shine at this Talladega Super Speedway. So, I kind of like that. I mean, I don't know if that's the direction you're headed for your pick necessarily, but yeah, man, Cindric could definitely be a dark horse. Real quick, I kind of want to tip the cap. I crossed state lines, kind of put me one in today, boys, and I put Byron to beat Reddick, and I never had a doubt with that one after about lap 60. I kind of knew Byron was in full control of that one for sure. But hey, Marty, who you got in mind for this Talladega race?
So, I mean, Talladega, if you are playing fantasy or if you are into sports gambling, it's tough. This is where your heart can definitely skip a beat, but it can also make for some big payouts here. So, but I'm going to go with people who have been tried, true, and tested, and I like Penske at these restrictor plate tracks. I have all season long. I think Austin Cindric, Joey Logano, and Ryan Blaney are all three good at this track. I think all three of them can win. If I had to pick one person, though, I'm going to go with Ryan Blaney. It seems like he can have Lady Luck on his side from time to time at these restrictor plate speedways, but I would not count out Austin Cindric. So, I mean, if you feel like he can make a run at this, Colin, he is great at these type of tracks. And I just don't think that we're going to quit seeing these non-playoff drivers coming up here and creating a mess, though. I mean, we saw it at Watkins Glen. We've seen it here today at Kansas. I don't think that's going to end anytime soon.
Who
You
who won
dirty
at
dog, Marty.
Talladega earlier this year? Reddick? Was
Yes.
Reddick won earlier this year? I
Marty,
would
you're a
think
dirty dog, man. I love Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney was my pick this week. As soon as I turned the page on the Talladega, it just hit me like a rock. I just
Yep.
knew he was going to be my guy. I'm rolling Ryan Blaney this week. Spoiler again. I seem to do this every week on this show, and it's really been working. I'm throwing it out early as we can get it going. Ryan Blaney's my pick. So, fellas, I guess since I'm making mine, you guys go ahead and tell me yours.
if we're rolling Penske, I'm going to go Logano. He set me up right beginning of the year. I think after this week and the restarts, he really showed his cards this week. He knows what to do late in these stages. He knows how to preserve his car. He knows how to preserve his tires, his fuel, and he knows how to feel the track out and then make a run for it in the last 10 laps. If he can stay up there in the top five, he's really pushing to take this.
Hey, he's made you look good this far. Don't get off that train
And
now,
I'm not a
baby. He's
fan, and
pissed
I'm not
off.
a fan. Actually, you know what? If
You
he
have to
wins
call yourself
this,
a fan. You're a
if
fan.
he wins this, if he wins the playoffs, if he wins the cup, I'll buy me some Logano gear because the middle finger to Suarez today. I mean, they showed it on broadcast. I was at that point. I'm a fan. I don't look good in yellow. I don't know many people who do, but I will make an exception if he wins the playoffs.
Hey, when we throw this video up, I'm all for having a little pop in of this middle finger we're talking about here, so the fans know exactly what we're talking about because it's too
I
sweet not to share.
I've got it on deck. And the best part is he's wearing the red gloves. And so it just sticks out. And everybody online just like, is he giving the thumbs up? I'm like, they were bumping and rubbing. No, he's not giving the thumbs up.
He was showing him he was number one. He was just using the wrong finger for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
So,
weather.
Colin, I'll let you go ahead and have the Blaney pick, even though you won today. So,
That's true. Hey man, if
Yeah,
you
so,
you're
like
not
Blaney,
supposed
so,
to
I'll
pick.
hop
but
off.
so you're not supposed to have first pick, but I'll let you have
I'll
it
hop.
because no,
I'll
I'll
hop
let you
off.
have it because I'm gonna roll with Alex Bowman. This guy has been the one in my corner that has proven all the doubters wrong this so far this postseason. But because I told you to watch out for him, he has swagger. I like his swagger. The dude just keeps finding ways to be a part of these playoffs. So I'll go ahead and pick Bowman at Talladega. Eventually, Hendrick's got to win another one of these at Talladega. So
Well,
I'll
you know
make
what
Bowman my
happens
pick.
here. You know what's going to happen here, fellas. Poetic justice. I picked out a turn. Blaney he's having a blowout on like lap 7. He's
Oh,
cutting one down. His day's over. I mean, this is just how it's going to go, and then rightfully so, man. That's what I get. But hey, real quick too, while we're here talking about picks, How's your guys' pick shaping up for the round of 12 and your final four looking? I mean, I know we're just one race into this round of 12 here, but we always like to update this, give you guys a shout out on what we have going on and how we're kind of looking. We made these picks before the playoffs started, so we like to give a little refresh every time. So real quick, Marty, tell me what you got in the final four in your round of 12.
Yeah, so my championship four, I think that they're looking just fine here. I still have Larson, Blaney, Elliott, and Bell, and I still have Christopher Bell winning this thing. I hopefully eventually his qualifying pays off here a little bit. It hasn't as of yet. I want to see him go out and win races here.
So I've got Larson, Logano, Reddick, Bell winning it, and Logano's my backup. So far, Reddick is struggling, and he might be the only one. If he doesn't figure it out here at Talladega, he might be the only one that is not in my top four.
Well, I remember last episode I was bragging quite a bit because my top four guys were all in the top four. Obviously, after this race, that was shaken up quite a bit. I have Reddick, William Byron, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell. I have William Byron winning the whole damn thing, and I'm going to stay heavy on that. Looked like he was finding his groove again. I kind of knew he'd get that rhythm back in the playoffs. Something to fight for here. But with that being said, the 1 through 12 standings as it sits right now, we have William Byron at 1, Ryan Blaney at 2, Christopher Bell at 3, Kyle Larson at 4, Denny Hamlin at 5, Alex Bowman 6, Chase Elliott 7, Joey Logano being number 8. And riding on the cut line at 9, we have Tyler Reddick at 10, Daniel Suarez 11, Chase Briscoe, and 12, Austin Cindric. And you kind of heard it here a little bit. Josh is liking the way this Austin Cindric team might look coming into this Talladega race. He's gonna have to make a move here, right, fellas? I mean, he can't have another poor performance here and think he's gonna get into the next round, correct?
Yeah, Cedric, he had some bad luck there spinning out, and I mean, he just barely kissed the wall there. If you look at it, he was pretty close to not damaging his car. He kissed the wall, and apparently it didn't. He really struggled with his car from there on out. So yeah, he needs to come out here and he needs to have some good luck going forward. I'm happy that he's been able to make some noise in these playoffs because he's really been, the kind of everybody has to talk about the weak link in every team. He's been kind of the weak link at Penske here a little bit. So I'm glad to see him running well, but after Kansas, he needs to go to Talladega and try to maximize points because he's a good road course racer. I could see him going to the Roval and making some noise as well. So I would not be surprised if you see him go to Talladega and go to the Roval and have a lot of stage points and have, come out with maximum points and maybe lead laps.
Yeah, Austin Cindric, he was looking good until he spun, lost those two tires, and he ended up, I think, buckling the front lip on the vehicle. And I think a lot of that is what had to do with his aerodynamics, and he just couldn't keep up. I think he finished dead last. I think he was last. I'm not 100% sure. He might have been ahead of Jimmy Johnson. Also, Jimmy Johnson was there today. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, he finished 34th. He didn't do well. Yeah, that front splitter messed him up pretty good.
Yeah.
Not a good performance there at all. He needs a big one here, fellas. Needs a big one for sure. But you know who I'm surprised about being outside the cut right now, especially after the start that he had, or where he qualified, I should say, Tyler Reddick, man. This is Josh. You kind of talked about it. He kind of just slipped back and just kept slipping, man, and never really found his groove again. I don't see Tyler Reddick finishing outside the cut in this round. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not giving up on him after one race in the round of 12. You guys tell me if you think differently.
I mean, he's our regular season champion for a reason. He's a good driver. I don't really know what was going on with the car today. I just don't think the car was locked down. I'm kind of surprised he qualified as high as he did with the car acting like it was coming out of the turns. I think they need to go back to the drawing board. I will say, watching his crew chief and his reaction to the way the car was handling was a lot different than I would expect my crew chief to respond to something like that. He's giving you feedback, he's trying to explain to you, and all your only answer as a crew chief is just like, doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand what you're telling me. Well, there needs to be a better communication level, and kind of the opposite, the other side of the coin to that is you see what happened to Larson today. You see the way Cliff Daniels was handling himself in the booth. It was professionalism. That's how you run a race team right there. That's how you act as a crew chief. And to see Tyler Reddick's crew chief and him kind of going back and forth over the radio about what was wrong with the car, and he's like, "Well, you just got to drive it. You got to accelerate harder." And your driver's telling you the car's not going to handle it. Now, to play devil's advocate, was Reddick scared? He should be. He wads it up, puts it in the wall. He's done for the race. We saw everybody was kissing the wall today. Everybody was touching that wall coming out of turn 2 and coming out of turn 4. So you kind of have to rely on your crew chief and your pit crew to make these adjustments for you. And I feel like kind of his crew let him down a little bit today.
Yeah. Do you
That's my
think that
opinion.
causes do you think that causes any problems down the road? Because I fully agree with you. I mean, there has to be some serious frustration from Tyler Reddick on this. I mean, I know I would be super pissed off too, like you said. I mean, you can't have your I can't, I guess you call it leader or however you want to look at that, to look at you and say, "Hey, I don't understand." That just doesn't. I don't know how you respond to that as a driver in the car. I feel like that's horrible to hear that, because then you kind of feel helpless. I feel like, to your point as well, Josh, some of these drivers in this sense, because of all the damage being taken, all the cautions, I feel like they just kind of race maybe a little on the defensive side, just try to get out with and finish the race. You don't want to not finish the race, especially if you're a playoff driver. So I think some of these guys are just trying to cross the finish line in one piece.
And I watch the conversation between Cliff Daniels and Kyle Larson today, and what it seemed like to me is that if they knew they weren't able to make the change he needed on that pit stop, they were already planning for the next one. He was in the pits and they were like, next time around, next caution, next time we hit the pits, we're going to do this. We already got a plan in place. If that didn't fix it, this is what we're going to do next time. And I feel like Tyler Reddick wasn't getting that from his crew today. And maybe that's why he was where he was on the racetrack all day.
Yeah, I mean, Cliff Daniels he's been one of the better crew chiefs when it comes to pushing a driver. He was on the Jimmy Johnson seventh championship winning team, so he got a front row seat of how Chad Knaus used to motivate Jimmy Johnson. And Chad Knaus was hard. It's hard on his drivers. I think at times Cliff Daniels can be hard on his driver, Kyle Larson. So I'm not, if I am Tyler Reddick, I'm not making a big deal out of this. My crew chief's trying to push me, trying to say, "Hey man, you're just going to have to be better off the exit of the corner." But I understand his frustration with him saying, "Hey man, I can't physically do that." We also saw Larson kind of chirp back to Cliff Daniels in this race too, when he was like, "Hey, I just don't understand why we're going to the outside and just letting everybody pass us." And he's like, "It's because I'm so damn slow, Cliff. It is because I have so much drag. I have damage on my car. I'm so slow. I'm just trying my best here." And then you saw Cliff kind of back off a little bit and, try, like Josh said, continue to work on the car. I think that pushing drivers, it's a long race. It can be frustrating. I think it's easy at times to get defeated out there. I think a crew chief has to be a sports psychologist / cheerleader at times, especially in these playoffs. It's a voice. You're either going to hear your spotter, or you're going to hear your crew chief. You're going to hear them all race long. You're going to need help from everybody at times in these playoffs.
I think to that point too, with Cliff kind of backing off of Kyle Larson here a little bit, we're talking about Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick. They're two of the best in the business. These crew chiefs do trust their guys. Like you said, Marty, when Kyle said, "Hey man, I'm just slow. You got to back off a little bit." He did, like you said, and I think he realized that I have one of the best drivers in the world driving this car right now. I need to understand what he's telling me as well. I have to take his input and just maximize the output that we can get. Let's just cross the finish line in one piece and get this race over with and move on to the next one. Kyle Larson's right now safely into the next round, and I kind of foresee him being safe into the round of 8 all the way through. So, fellas, I don't know if you guys have anything else to add for this kind of the preview of Talladega or the review of the Kansas race, and if so, shoot me. Tell me what you got.
So I will say, since we're talking about like crew chief and talking back and forth on the radios and stuff and how difficult that kind of stuff can be, we saw Justin Haley today. He's got a new spotter. And we saw the
Yeah.
mistake he made coming out of turn 2 because the spotter's new and he's not used to communicating with this guy. And he ends up hooking it left and taking out John Hunter Nemechek. And you see how difficult it is to get that feedback back and forth. I will say, listening to, here we go again with the Logano talk. I can't help myself. I just can't help. I just love the guy. He's a handsome Italian man. I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, hearing his spotter go back and forth with him, I don't know how the man processes the information. He's not only is he saying positions, but he's saying driver names too. If it was me driving the car, and my spotter's giving me driver names and he's calling them by their first name. That would confuse the hell out of me. So there's a lot that's lost over radio and communication and stuff like that. And I think we have to take that into account, especially with some of these drivers changing teams right now. It's not the easiest to communicate during the race like that.
I'm glad you
Yeah,
bring that up though, Josh, because the average fan probably doesn't realize how difficult that communication barrier is.
yeah, and every driver is different. Some driver doesn't want all that information. Some driver wants to have minimal information. Just tell me when I have a car to my outside or inside. Other than that, be quiet. Some drivers just like to look out their mirrors and out there. Now they have that rear view camera screen in their car. It's a little over the top if you ask me, but whatever. Hey, we're not going to make a passing any easier when you could use a rear view camera and make people arrow tight. But I won't go there right now. But so the driver has multiple avenues of getting information now. It's personal preferences, how much, especially you go to some of these drive-through tracks like Talladega, it is insane how much information drivers like Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin, these really good research plate drivers, they want to know stuff that's happening 4 cars back. So it's definitely a lot to take in. But I would say the biggest thing that I want to kind of talk about as we're leaving here, I guess this might be our too fast exiting segment. But my too fast exiting segment is going to be, hey, we saw a great race here. I'm very happy with what I saw. We came fresh off of Bristol, people being upset about the short track package. I completely understand that. But I thought that we saw meaningful restarts. I thought we saw passing. I thought we saw drivers struggle to drive their car, which, in my opinion, if a driver is struggling, if it is hard to drive the track, generally speaking, I feel like we have good racing. So I was happy to see that at Kansas. I thought that we saw the drivers have to work really hard, and I thought we saw passing. We saw a lot of action out there. Talladega, as long as we don't start saving gas, nobody wants to watch that. If we are going to have a fuel mileage saving gas race, buddy, that is not what I am tuning in to watch. I do not want to see that. And if I'm NASCAR, I really don't want to see that. I don't want drivers out there making two of my stages completely worthless while everybody saves gas and tries to minimize their time on pit road. I don't want my racing to be on pit road. I want my racing to be on the track. So I have no desire to see a fuel mileage race. I hope that somebody goes up there and pushes the pace and makes them. If a couple drivers hook together and push the pace, it will force everybody else to not be able to save gas. And that's what I hope to see next weekend at Talladega. Hopefully, with the playoffs, with this being amped up a little bit, you will have drivers out there doing that, clawing with their fingernails to get stage points. I mean, you can see Alex Bowman or Austin Cindric go out there and try to get, possibly 15 stage points in between two stages. They're that good at restrictor plate racing. So that's what I'm expecting to see, and that's just kind of if I was NASCAR and I was in race control, I do not want to see fuel mileage. That is my worst nightmare going into this weekend.
Yeah, Marty, you kind of touched on this. We're heading right into our too fast exiting segment is right where we were going with this, and I totally agree with you. I had the same thing to talk about in this segment. I'm super happy with how this Kansas race went, man. I felt like it was a really good answer for how upset the fans were after the Bristol track. This was a really good response to that. A lot of tough racing, guys getting loose, guys really pushing pace, made it a lot of fun. This was a great race. And to your point, I think some of these guys that are like on the outside looking in on the cut line, I think these guys kind of have to push pace in this race, Marty. I don't think these guys want to come down to the Roval and have it all be all ends be there. I don't think these guys really want to have their fate in that race. I think they want to have good performances here the best they can to try and secure a spot before that race. So now that I'm kind of done exiting too fast, Josh, what do you have for us here?
I think it was a great race. We saw a bunch of different drivers leading. I don't exactly remember. I lost count after like 14 lead changes. Carson Hocevar was up there. Martin Truex led a few laps. Kyle Busch. We had Kyle Busch up there, and I really want to see this guy get a win. Do I think he kind of blew his win? I think so. Not so much his fault. Can't blame Briscoe for not giving him the room. But we also got to see the watermelon man smash a watermelon, and that's awesome. I'm still rooting for these guys that didn't make it in the playoffs. And I think Ross Chastain's playoff contender all
Yeah.
season long. He just Trackhouse, they had some issues this year, and I'm looking forward to watching this race next week at Talladega. And you never know, we might see one of these non-playoff drivers show up and show force.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
was a
Josh.
big win for Trackhouse. I don't think that we can sleep on that because you have heard rumors of Pitbull wanting to cut back funding and cut back. I've heard, it's just rumors at this point. None of this is obviously set in stone, but we've heard the whisperings of Pitbull wanting to kind of draw back a little bit from Trackhouse Racing, but they also go out and they start. They've shown that they want to go out and start MotoGP racing, which I think is incredible. That's incredible. That's huge news.
They got
So
two
I think this,
bikes.
yeah, that's huge news, and you have to have a lot of funding for that. You have to be very committed to that, and that's a very I love. I don't know if anybody has ever watched MotoGP racing, but it's one of my favorite forms of road course racing. I love it. So I think this was a big win for them. That can't be overstated. I think this was a big win for Trackhouse. I know Ross was thirsty with Daniel Suarez getting a win earlier in the season and making his way into the playoffs and getting out of the round of 16. So this was a big win for them. That momentum, I think, will probably continue. He's won at Talladega before. It was kind of a right place, right time type scenario. But also Carson Hocevar, I would not be surprised if he wins a race. I'll just say it. You have been noticing him more and more in the top 10, and you can tell that they're willing to gamble with strategy at times to get to the front. If they gamble at the right time, I could see them winning a race.
I think next year is going to be a really good year for Carson Hocevar. Coming into next year, he's kind of got his rookie year under his belt, and he's going into next year. And I think he's going to look really good next year, and maybe even a playoff contender next season. I think he's driving for Spire, correct?
Yes, yes.
And you've really seen some big improvements in the back half of the season from Spire Motorsports, and he's doing very well behind the wheel of that car. And he's a young and rising star. Also, to kind of get on what you were saying about Trackhouse, just like a side segment here, Trackhouse has really good ties with Red Bull, and in the past we've seen some back and forth between the different motorsports. Trackhouse having a good relationship with Red Bull might see the newly retired F1 driver Daniel Ricciardo come to NASCAR and maybe run some races next year. It would be pretty cool. I know Trackhouse isn't running the 91 right now. SVG fills in on the 16 when they run road courses. So I know they have like that experimental 91 car. And it'd be really cool to see an F1 driver kind of like Montoya back in the day come over from F1.
Well, you guys touch on a couple things that I kind of want to hit on a little bit here too. Josh, I think you're exactly correct. You have been talking about how Kyle Busch you think would go ahead and win a race during the playoffs, and I think you are correct. I think this was the car that he had to go win one. The number 8 Chevy's really been tough on him this season, and I think this was the chance for him to go grab it. And I do agree with you. I think those chances are really slim from here on out. But also, we've talked about Carson Hocevar a lot here recently, Marty, like you alluded to. I mean, he is really making waves. I totally agree. That guy's going to be a big factor next year. And yeah, man, getting to see the watermelon man smash a watermelon at the end of this race is always exciting. We haven't got to see that too much this season. I'm a big Ross Chastain fan, unlike anybody else, because nobody else seems to be a big fan of him and his driving tactics. But hey, I'm here all for that, man. We're here to win, and I love that the guy just wants to win. I'm all about that. So if you guys don't have anything else, we're going to go ahead and kind of wrap this up. Really excited for the Talladega race. Don't forget, that is this Sunday, October 6th at 1 o'clock. Talladega Yellowwood 500. We cannot wait for this one, fellas. This is going to be super exciting. It's really going to shape up the playoffs the rest of the way. Until next time, that's Josh. That's Marty. Follow us at X or Twitter, whatever you like to call it, at DT_sports_. YouTube, Deep Thread Sports. Facebook and Spotify, Deep Thread Sports. Instagram, Deep Thread Sports with a Z. TikTok, Deep Thread Sports Network. Until next time, this is the Splash and Go podcast with Deep Thread Sports Network. Peace.
See ya.
See ya.